welcome to another episode of Garden to Table with Rose, and I am Rose. So today I'm back in my little kitchen and I am making dinner, and for dinner I am making smothered chicken. Smothered chicken. Why am I making smothered chicken? It's not something that I typically make. Matter of fact, I don't think I've made smothered chicken in years. It is tasty, you know, it's comfort food, soul food, southern food, however you want to term it, stick to your ribs food. But I usually just don't cook a lot of that kind of food because I'm usually trying to lose weight. And if I ate that kind of food regularly, I would probably be 50 pounds heavier. So usually I don't make anything smothered in gravy and with butter, lots of butter and all that good stuff, unless it's a special treat. But I think I saw this video on YouTube where this guy was making smothered chicken. It just popped up in my feed or whatever, and it looked so good. I was like, oh my goodness, I need to make that. So that's what I'm making today. So first thing you're going to need is a cocktail or a glass of wine, whatever your preference is. Beer, I guess water would work too. I have a Moscow Mule today that I made. It's a simple 1, 2, 3 recipe, I call it. You need 1 part or 1 ounce, we can say ounces, 1 part of lime juice, 2 parts or 2 ounces of vodka, and 3 parts or 3 ounces of ginger ale, ginger beer, ginger soda, some kind of sparkling ginger flavored beverage. And so you literally just mix those 3 things together over ice and pour it over ice. Put it in your highball glass, or if you have those little copper Moscow Mule mugs, you can use that. And you're good to go. I use flavored vodka that I made myself, kind of infused some plain vodka with citrus fruit. And so I have flavored citrus vodka, so I didn't use the lime juice. So if you have flavored, you can skip 1 step. That's one less thing you need. So this is tasty. You can also add mint to this. Now that might be a different name for that. I'm not sure. Maybe it has something to do with Kentucky. I'm thinking horse races. I know they do a drink there that's pretty popular with mint, and I can't remember what that is. But this will taste good with mint as well. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is preheat your oven to 425. You want to take a pan, and I'm using my little induction cooktop here so that I can do this video. Obviously, I would normally do this on my stove. So you want to take a big skillet, big pan, and heat a small layer of oil. You know, just enough to coat the bottom so your chicken doesn't stick. So you're going to heat that up because you're going to brown this chicken before you bake it. You're going to bake it in the oven. Alright, so for the recipe, you are going to need 6 to 8 chicken thighs, bone in, and the skin on. Now, you could do this with other proteins if you really want to. If you're trying to cut calories, you could do chicken breast, boneless, skinless chicken breast. You could do it with pork, like pork chops or pork steak. Some kind of beef might work. But this recipe that I'm doing today is just smothered chicken. The bones do actually add flavor to the meat. So, you know, you get a more flavorful product if you leave the bones in. But if you don't like dealing with bones, of course you can get boneless meat if that's what you want. Now, here, I live in Kalamazoo, Michigan. When chicken's on sale at my local store, they a lot of times will put drumsticks and thighs in these big family packs on sale, and it's usually like 99 cents a pound. You can't really beat 99 cents a pound. I mean, unless you grow your own chickens or something. So I usually stock up then. So my family pack of chicken thighs actually had 8 chicken thighs in it. So I tend to clean my meats, meaning I rinse it in cool water and examine it. You know, one thing I've noticed since the pandemic has started is that the chicken that I've been buying, and it's the same chicken from the same grocery store, it's not as clean as it used to be. Like now I'm getting feathers and hair on the skin of the chicken, and that did not used to happen hardly ever. So I feel like I'm back in the day when I was a kid, and that was the norm, that you would have hair and feathers on chicken. You had to pull them out if there was any left and burn, at least that's what my grandmother did, burn the hair off on the stove, you know, over a flame. So I feel like I'm back in those days, because that's what I'm getting. But so I examine each piece. I cut off any extraneous crazy looking stuff, anything big pieces of skin with hair or feathers or any of that on it, I cut it off. So then you want to let your chicken drain, and that's up to you how you do it. You can put it in the colander. You can blot it gently with paper towels if you want to do that. You want some moisture because you want your seasonings and stuff to stick, but you don't want it super wet. So I drained mine in a colander, and then I put it in a bowl. Me personally, and let me make a disclaimer, I am not a chef. So everything I say is stuff that I do. I am not telling anyone that this is what they need to do. So let me make that clear. For me personally, I like my meats to be close to room temperature when I cook them. So I don't actually measure the temperature, but what I usually do is I will take the meat out about 30 minutes before I'm going to cook it. However I'm going to cook it. It doesn't matter if it's steak or chicken. If it's a thick cut of fish like a salmon, I will take that out in advance too. You know, seafoods and fish, you don't need to do that. You can take it out if you want, but it's not as necessary to me as it is with like meat, because it's thick and you want it to, at least I want it to cook evenly. And it seems to me if it's a lower temperature going into hot oil or a hot oven, it's going to cook more evenly and maybe even a few minutes quicker. I don't know, but that's just what I do. So I got my bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs in one bowl. Then you're going to need a cup of flour, which I have here. And like I said, you're going to need some kind of oil to coat the bottom of your pan. You can use any oil you want. I'm using EVOO today, extra virgin olive oil, just because that's what I'm using. You're going to need a big onion. I have these kind of medium-sized onions, so I have 2. I'm going to use 2. You're going to need some parsley, and that's really just for a garnish. That's all you need that for. You're going to need a couple of cloves of garlic. I think I have 3 because I really like garlic. Because you're gonna mince that up. And here I have, this is not part of the recipe, I have some green tomatoes sliced because I am going to fry these suckers and have a little fried green tomatoes alongside my chicken. And these happened to fall off my tomato plants when I was out in my garden doing my thing, and I wasn't going to let them go to waste. They're still green. I don't usually eat fried green tomatoes. I don't usually eat a lot of fried foods. That's like a special treat for me. But since they fell off and I needed to use them and they're green, I am going to fry them. Now for the fried green tomatoes, usually I just do like a cornmeal coating, maybe put a little flour in there, and then bread those. You might have to dip them in some egg, you know, take an egg, 1 egg, and just beat it up. You may have to dip them in there to get the coating to stick, and then just fry them in a light coating of oil. So I'm going to do that as an aside, and then I'll have that as a snack while I'm waiting on the chicken to cook, because the chicken is going to take a while. You also are going to need a number of ingredients, and I'll put the recipe in the description box if you want to use the recipe that I'm using. Oh, fried green tomatoes. I'm actually going to use this fry mix because I had it in my cabinet, a huge bag of it. I think I just bought this just to, in case I didn't feel like mixing up a batter or whatever. If I wanted to fry something, I just bought this bag to have it in my pantry, and since I have it, I'm going to use it. I usually, if I have fried green tomatoes, which is infrequently, I like to put either ketchup or hot sauce on them. So I got my Cholula hot sauce, imported from Mexico. I just bought this and just to try something different. Usually I use Frank's Red Hot. That's what I grew up on. You can find it everywhere, and I like it. But I thought I'd try some more fancy hot sauces. And this is actually really good. I thought, you know, they kind of all would taste the same. But this actually is more flavorful than the Frank's Red Hot. It just has more complexity to the flavor. So it's pretty good. I like it. So I'm going to put that on my fried green tomatoes. But back to the chicken. I know I keep going back and forth. Oh, and the fried green tomatoes, I'm just going to season those with seasoned salt, like Lawry's seasoned salt, and some black pepper, and that's it. You want it pretty simple for something like that. At least I think it works better when it's simple. Also, for the chicken, you're going to need 2 tablespoons of butter. You're going to need some heavy cream, half a cup of heavy cream, whipping cream. You're going to need 2 cups of broth, chicken broth. Now, if you have broth or stock, you can use that. You can use bouillon cubes as long as you hydrate them, right? Make 2 cups worth. I think this is bouillon cubes that I'm using today just because I grabbed the first thing that I saw. I usually use Better Than Bouillon, which is like a concentrated base. So it's I don't even know how to, it's like a paste. And it comes with, you know, chicken, beef, vegetable, and it's in the soup aisle. It's in a jar, and you have to refrigerate it after you open it. But usually I use that. To me, it has a more umami, richer flavor. But I'm just using bouillon. And really, it's not so important in this dish because you're going to get a lot of flavor from the chicken itself, the chicken bones. And you're putting this in a gravy. So the flavor is going to be covered up by onions and the, you know, cream and flour mixture. So I'm not too worried about it. I am also going to use some granulated garlic or garlic powder, whatever you have, paprika, onion powder, or granulated onion, oregano, fresh, dried, is up to you. But this is a dish that's cooked in a gravy, simmered in a gravy. It's a heavy, hearty thing. And so your flavors of your herbs and stuff probably aren't really going to come through that strongly. So you can use your dried and save your fresh for something fancy if you want to. Also some red pepper flakes. This is so far my favorite brand, Cinto. There seem to be more vibrant than some of the other brands that I've tried at the store. You're going to need salt and pepper. And then I like to add, and this isn't in the original recipe that I used, I like to add a little bit of this browning and seasoning sauce. This is called Kitchen Bouquet. And I have been using this stuff for years, and it is obscure because it's like in the gravy broth soup aisle, and there's only like 2 varieties of this browning and seasoning sauce, like 2 companies that they will carry. But this is an interesting product. A little bit goes a long way. That's why this bottle is so small, and this bottle has probably lasted me for a year, because you only need like a 1/4 teaspoon to 1/2 teaspoon. But what it is it's some kind of concoction that whenever you're doing anything that has a gravy or a sauce that you want to be dark and rich, it intensifies that flavor. It like adds this umami kind of depth to it, and it makes it, whatever your sauce or gravy is, it makes it a darker brown. So I've always used this when I'm making gravy from scratch. I'm going to use it in here because I personally like my gravy generally to be brown. You know, not so much the white or the kind of pale yellow. I really like a brown gravy, and it adds something. So There's a lot of stuff in here. There's a vegetable base, caramel, a bunch of other stuff. But this is inexpensive. Let's see, this was $2.58 for this bottle. And like I said, it'll last you like a year unless you cook constantly or something. You're going to need, you know, tongs, measuring spoons, that kind of thing. And I believe that is it for the chicken recipe. Now, I'm heating my oil up because we're going to brown this chicken. I have my chicken thigh sitting here ready to be seasoned. This is actually for my green tomatoes, which I am actually going to do first. So I'm going to put a little of this seasoning in this bowl because I want to use the same pan. So I want to do these tomatoes before my pan gets dirty. And I only have like one tomato here, so one does not need a ton of coating mix. I'm not even going to use egg. You know, if you're doing a whole huge thing of them, you might want to use the egg. I don't see a need to do that because I'm just doing like literally one tomato. So I'm just going to season up my fry mixture, turn my little cooktop up. I had it on low. I'm going to turn that up to high to get it going. And then I want some pepper in this little batter, or I should say coating. And mix that up a little bit. Now you also want a pan that has a lid because you don't want the stuff splattering all over you when it starts frying. Also, your chicken skin is going to release a lot of grease because it's fatty, and so you really only need a thin coating on the bottom. We're not making fried chicken, you just want to brown it, so you don't need a ton of oil, okay? But use an oil you like because you're going to use the oil to cook the rest of the stuff, to make the gravy and that kind of stuff. I don't think I'll use all of it. The original recipe calls for you to just use whatever oil is left. To me, that's going to be a lot of oil because there's a lot of chicken there, a lot of skin. So I'm probably going to drain most of it off and just use a little bit. I don't like things greasy. So let me chop these onions. You want your onions to have a rough chop. Parsley. A rough chop. So I'm going to chop these up. And then while I'm doing that, let me talk to you about what you want to have with your smothered chicken. Now, I would recommend something that's going to soak up that gravy. So that could be, usually it's going to be rice, you know, white rice. You could use brown rice, but white rice seems to go best with stuff like this. And that's what I'm using. I'm using jasmine rice, which is really the only white rice I buy. I just like the way it tastes. It's really fragrant. So I really like the jasmine rice. So that's what I'm making. My rice is already cooked. It's in my rice cooker. I have a rice cooker. I think it's by Panasonic. They're really handy. You know, you might think it's just a big pot that boils liquid. It is not. It really does, at least the fancy ones, the more expensive ones, it really does kind of monitor the temperature. It gradually heats up the rice to let it kind of soak and absorb some of the water. It can sense when the water has evaporated pretty much and cut itself off or put itself into warm mode. So I really like the rice cooker. Otherwise, you got to do too much timing, you know, setting a timer or watching your rice, making sure it doesn't bubble up and boil over, which rice is prone to do when you're boiling it on the stove. So I don't do that. The only thing I do is I rinse my rice, if I'm doing white rice at least, with warm water several times to get some of the starch off. I do not like really sticky rice. I do not like mushy rice. I'm very particular about my rice. I like it to have a little bit of a bite to it, a little bit firm, and I like the grains to separate easily. I don't want it all clumped together. So I rinse it several times. When I was a kid, my grandmother made rice all the time. She would boil it. She would put it in the pot and boil it with, you know, put cold water, boil it. Once it reached a boil, she'd dump that out, rinse it, and then start cooking it, which is a lot of steps. So I just rinse it with warm water. You could soak it for a couple hours if you wanted to go that route. And then I use my rice cooker. I add salt to that. Not as much salt as you think you would normally need, because for whatever reason, the rice cooker seems to infuse the grains with the salt. So it comes out tasting a little bit saltier than if you had just sprinkled it on after, I think. So, and then I use some kind of oil. I tend to put about 2 tablespoons in for, let's see, usually I'm doing about 3 cups of rice, 2.5 cups of actual dry rice. So I'll put like 2 tablespoons of some kind of oil in there. And you can use butter. I grew up, you know, butter and salt on rice was my jam. But, you know, I mix it up. Woo! Turn these. I mix it up. I use coconut oil a lot. Rice is a bland, you know, item. So you can use something that has a lot of flavor, and it's like a vehicle for that flavor. So any kind of good flavored oil. I tend to buy a lot of different like nut oils and stuff like that. Avocado oil. So any of those I think would work good, because you're going to really get the flavor coming through in your rice. But you need a little bit of oil just so it helps the grains not clump together, and it gives it a lot of flavor. And so that is how I prepare my rice. You could do mashed potatoes, which would be great. I can't think of anything else. If you are diet conscious, one, you probably wouldn't be making smothered anything. But if you are diet conscious and maybe you decide to do boneless, skinless chicken breast, and you want something healthier with that, I would go with cauliflower rice maybe. And I know a lot of people don't like it. It's not something that I enjoy much either. I'll eat it, you know, I'll eat it if it's served to me, but I'm not a fan of the cauliflower rice. But that is something that would absorb the gravy, and that would be a tasty side. And then you probably want something green, some kind of green vegetable to go with that. You know, you could do a leafy green, like a collard green, a mustard green would be great with this. You could do green beans, peas. I'm doing fried green tomatoes, so I'm probably not going to do an additional vegetable, at least not today, maybe with leftovers. You could do a salad. So you got some options there for what you can have with it. So rough chop your onion, and I got a lot of onion. I probably could have got away with just using one of those, so I may not use all of this in the gravy, but I'll use most of it. And then you want to mince up your garlic and have that ready to go to the side. Now I am going to get my tomatoes out of here and put them on something so that they can cool off before I eat them. All right, I am back, and let's see, I got my little fried green tomatoes that I'm going to snack on here. I know I'm like adding all kinds of extra stuff that have nothing to do with this chicken. But, you know, I'm hungry. It's going to take this chicken a while. All right. So what I did was I mixed all of my spices into the flour, the cup of flour. Now the recipe will have you mix the spices separately so that you can season the chicken with part of it and then add the rest of the flour mixture, which is fine. I wanted to skip that step. So I added all the spices in. And I forgot to tell you, you're also going to need some kind of chili powder. I'm using chipotle just because that's what the first one I found in my spice cabinet. You could use It's recommended probably just plain old chili powder, just the regular cheap red stuff you get. But you can use what you want. I got my skillet heating up with my thin layer of oil. The oven is already at 425. My chicken has been sitting out. It's reached room temperature. I'm going to chop up this garlic as I continue to talk. And I have garlic presses. I have lots of gadgets, but for whatever reason I just still, for the most part, unless I have a lot of garlic I have to cut up, I still just whack it. Whack-a-mole. Whack it and peel it and cut it up that way. Or I have been buying the minced garlic in a jar, and that's because the one that I get is from the Indian grocery store, and it's a huge jar, but it is really, it's a high quality. It's more of a paste. It's actually not even granulated. It's like a garlic paste, and and it's not very expensive, so I buy that jar. It'll last me. I use a lot of garlic because I really like garlic, so it'll last me for maybe 6 months, if that. And then, you know, I just go back over there and buy another jar of it. So, but you can use fresh garlic. I'm using fresh garlic for this portion just because I have some sitting around the house. So you want to mince it up. It's going to be added to your gravy. So, you know, it's not all going to cook down really. So you're not necessarily going to be getting any pieces, chunks of garlic or anything like that you can discern. So let me see, I got that all chopped up. Make sure your knives are sharp. You need a sharp knife to cut and dice and chop and all of that, small dice effectively. So, you know, use your little handheld knife sharpener. I have an electric one that I never really use. I always just use a little little one you hold in your hand. And it seems to work. And, you know, pretty much every time after I cook and wash the knife, I usually sharpen it again because they get dull really easily. But, you know, if you sharpen it, it'll last you for years and years and years. So, what was I going to do next? I'm going to taste my fried green tomatoes. Ooh, that sauce is spicy. It's tasty. I never really saw the big draw of fried green tomatoes. I mean, it's just kind of like eating a fried coated and deep fried vegetable or something. So it's not anything different to me than fried zucchini, fried mushrooms, or whatever. Tasty and spicy. All right, let me go over these amounts with you that you will need for your spice mixture. You're going to need 2 teaspoons of granulated or powdered garlic, a teaspoon of paprika, 2 teaspoons of oregano, a half teaspoon of chili powder, 2 teaspoons of granulated or powdered onion, and salt and pepper. That's pretty much it. So right now I'm going to coat my chicken. I have a plate here to put it on after I've coated it. And I added salt and pepper to this flour mixture as well, in addition to all the spices. And like I said, I skipped a step because they wanted you to just mix the spices, season the chicken with half of it, and then use the rest in the flour. And to me, that was like an extra unnecessary step. I just mixed it all together. So I'm going to flour this all up. I'm going to have to cook it in 2 batches. I'm sure you will too, because with 8 thighs, you won't be able to fit it all in one skillet, that's for sure. And you don't want to pack it in because you don't want it to steam just yet. You want it to brown. So you're only going to put in, 4 or 5 pieces at one time. And this is a, I think, 14-inch skillet I have. 16-inch or 14-inch probably. So flour it up, you know, shake it a little bit to get your excess off. And you can put this on a rack if you want. You know, if I were like frying chicken, actually frying it in a deep vat of oil, I would put it on a rack and let it sit for about 30 minutes because that gives time for the coating to kind of dry out a little bit and adhere more to the chicken. So I would put it on a cooling rack that's sitting in a sheet pan and just let it sit there at room temperature. Or if you were, you know, you could do that in advance. You could do it like hours in advance and put it back in the refrigerator and let it sit. But we are not really frying this. We're just kind of browning it, and the flour is, you know, going to be used for the gravy, to create the gravy. I like gravy quite a bit, particularly if I have something to soak it up, like some rice or potatoes. And you know, I limit my carbs, so I don't get a lot of gravy because I don't eat a lot of rice and potatoes. So this is a treat, definitely. And this is a lot. There is no way I'm going to eat these. These are gigantic. There's no way I'm going to eat 8 chicken thighs. I mean, I'm single. It's just me. And I have 1 kid still at home. And we don't eat this much. Yeah, so, you know, there'll be plenty of leftovers. And I will I'll probably end up having to give the dogs the last of it because I'm not going to eat 4 or 5 days of chicken thighs. No way. I'll eat leftovers maybe 3 times, you know, the same meal. But more than that is too much for me. So we probably will end up sharing it with the dogs, which they will love because they love meat. That's for sure. And these, like I said, these thighs are huge. They're not tiny. Of course, this is this is factory farm chicken. It's not like it's organic farm, you know, from farm to you, or free range or organic or any of that. This is just a regular old family pack, store brand chicken parts, which I'm fine with. I don't need organic meats and all of that. I mean, if I were a farmer, then I'd do it because I'd be able to control that myself. But I'm not paying 3 times more for meats just to get. And these titles, these labels are tricky too. And if you really research nutrition and food science, sheesh, I'm burning the dang on oil up. You would find that a lot of these labels are misleading. Okay. I think I may have to scratch that oil. See, I talk so much that my oil is burnt. Oh man, that's crazy. And no, I am not going to edit that out. I am not going to stop and start again and pretend like none of that happened. Well, I don't know, I may speed this segment up because I don't want this video to take forever, but I am definitely not trying to create a perfect picture here. I am actually just taking you on a journey in my actual kitchen, me actually doing what I do, and you know, the hope is that it's one, inspiring to some people who might think, well, let me try cooking something for dinner, let me try making my own smothered chicken or something to that effect. And the other thing is, I hope it's entertaining because I have fun cooking in general, but I also have a lot of fun making these videos. That's why I do it. I mean, I'm not getting paid to do it. It's on my dime. So I would not do this if it were not fun. And if the minute it becomes not fun, I will stop doing it, because this is not my livelihood. This is not something I have to do. It's just a hobby. So that is one reason why I can leave the bloopers in, because I don't have to create a pristine product. This like a mountain of chicken, man. All right, this is the last piece. And then after I get this all coated, what I'm going to do is you need to save your flour, because you're gonna add a little bit of this to the gravy base when you're making your gravy. So just save it. Don't dump it out. Save it. You're going to use a little bit of it, not a lot. Maybe a couple of tablespoons or something. Alright. So there's my mountain of coated chicken. Awesome. Let me get rid of this bowl. Now, I am going to have to get this grease out of this skillet that I burnt and put some new grease in there. Start again. I don't usually burn stuff. That's not usually my MO, but I mean, making the video, there you go. That's what happens. So I will be back with a fresh skillet, okay? All right, I'm back. And so I have cleaned out my skillet. Started over with a fresh coating of oil, and it's pretty hot right now. So what I am going to do is put a few of the pieces in the oil, and then you want to let it brown. So you want to cook it over medium heat or medium high, about 5 minutes on each side. Okay, put the skin side down, because it's going to release oil. So turn it up. Oh, now it's not hot enough. First it was burning. Now it's not hot enough. Okay, so I think I'll be able to fit 4 pieces. So I'm going to do half of my batch at a time. Got 4 pieces here. These thighs are huge. Like, what kind of hormones did they inject in that dang on bird? It's gigantic. I don't know if you've ever gotten that organic chicken. Turn that up. But they're usually tiny. Very tiny. And these things are ginormous that you get at the grocery store. So I got 4 pieces in here. Like I said, you want to cook it about 5 minutes each side to let it brown. Take that out of the oil, put it somewhere on a plate. I'm just going to sit it on while I do the second batch. All right, I'm back. The first half of the chicken is done. The second half is just about done. So I'm going to take that out and add it to my plate, and then we can make the gravy and get this in the oven. And you're going to put the lid back on to put it in the oven as well. So I don't know if you can see this, but my chicken pieces are nice and crispy. At least the skin is. They're not cooked all the way through, obviously. I'm only cooking it 5 minutes on each side. So it's not cooked all the way through, but you just want to brown it, basically. Get a little bit of a crispy crust going. Ooh, let me put that there. All right, so next you want to take your onions and you're going to cook them in the skillet with the leftover oil. you know, you shouldn't have too much left over, really. I actually had to add a little bit more to fry the second batch. So I'm gonna put this in here. Saute this for about 3-5 minutes, somewhere in there. And then I'm gonna add the garlic and some red pepper flakes. And then we're gonna gradually whisk in the chicken broth and your half a cup of heavy cream and your 2 tablespoons of butter. And then you're gonna put your chicken back in there. Make sure you spoon some of your sauce over the chicken. Let me get a spoon here. Spatula, spoon. And then you're gonna put the lid on and bake it for, how long? An hour, I believe. Yeah, 1 hour with the lid on. So this is so much chicken, there's no way it's gonna fit in this skillet. This is about, I think, a 14-inch skillet. I have a bigger one, a couple of bigger ones, but they're still probably only about 16 inches. And that's not big enough either. I maybe could fit 6 in there. I could fit maybe 5 in here, 6 or 7. And so I'm not going to risk it. I think what I am going to do is put it all in my Dutch oven. I pulled out my, I have a porcelain coated cast iron Dutch oven. So I pulled that out. I'm going to stack it all in there along with the gravy. Right now, you know, when you bake it, you're kind of braising it. You want the chicken to tenderize and everything to kind of meld together. So I don't want any overflows or any nonsense like that. So I'm going to transfer it to another pan. Now, if you had smaller thighs or you only use 6, because the recipe says 6 to 8, then you probably wouldn't need to do this step of transferring it to something else. But I just don't want it to overflow out of the pan. I don't want any spills, so that's what I'm going to do. That smells really good. Too bad there isn't smell-o-vision. It smells really good. And you got the chicken that was frying in the oil, and then the onions. Now I'm going to add the garlic, and garlic you don't cook for long. Garlic burns easily. So when you put garlic in, something that you're sauteing, you just kind of want to cook it for a minute. And then move on. Go on about your business. And I think I need a whisk for this. I probably could do it with a spoon, actually. For the gravy. I don't want it to get lumpy. So 1 minute, and then I'm going to add some of this flour. Probably a couple of tablespoons first. Remember I told you to save this or more because I like a lot of gravy actually, and why not? So let me put this over here. I think I probably added 1/4 of a cup, and I'm good with that. I like extra gravy, so make more than the recipe calls for. So you want to cook the flour whenever you're making a gravy or a roux, or you know, with flour, depending on what it is, you want it to start to turn golden. If you're making a gravy, you probably want it to start to turn golden. If you were making like a mac and cheese, and my mac and cheese, I make a roux for that, and so I thicken it with flour. I don't want that to turn too brown because I'm making mac and cheese, but you still need to cook it for a little bit, or else you get this raw, floury taste, and you don't want that in your gravy. So just cook it until, you know, it kind of starts to brown and gets to the color that you think you would like your gravy. And then after that, we're going to slowly add in the chicken's broth or stock, whatever you're using. You can use a whisk for that. I'm just going to use this big spoon because that's what I have, and I'm not going to dirty up something else to do that. And you want to turn the heat down for this. I didn't mention that. So you had it on medium-high probably for your frying your chicken. You want to turn it down to medium or medium-low, you know. And you want to watch this. Don't go somewhere and leave it, because flour can burn quickly. It can turn pretty quickly. So actually what I'm going to do is add the butter now. 2 tablespoons of butter. I always buy unsalted butter. They probably want you to use salted butter in the recipe because most savory dishes call for salted butter, but I only buy unsalted simply because I use butter in a lot of recipes. I use it in baking, and a lot of times they don't want you to use salted butter, so I just get it all unsalted. If I need more salt to the dish, I'll add it separately. So I'm adding the butter. I want the butter to cook with the flour a bit. This is what I call stick to your ribs. Stick to your ribs food. Smothered chicken. It smells really good. The chicken, the onions, the garlic. You're not here, but it smells great. So let me give my chicken broth here a little bit of a stir. Just because. Alright, so I would pour this slowly, and you want to stir, stir, stir the whole time. You don't want any lumps. So a little bit at a time. And keep stirring, keep stirring. And actually, I don't know, I maybe should add a little bit more water since I decided I wanted to make extra gravy. We'll see. I'll let it thicken up first and then decide if I need to thin it out. There's going to be juices that come out of the chicken because remember your chicken isn't fully cooked. So that's going to add a little bit to it as well. But I want a lot of gravy left over so I can spoon that on my rice generously. So what do we say, a half a cup, 4 ounces of heavy cream. So right now it's coming to a little bit of a simmer. I would let it get up to a full simmer before I add the cream. This is my preference. And then at the very end I'm going to add the kitchen bouquet because I just like it to have a little brownness to it. So whenever I'm making a gravy, I will usually add that. You don't have to. You can leave it out. It's not in the original recipe. Alright, so that's simmering a bit. Now I'm going to add my cream. Gradually keep stirring again. Don't stop stirring. And I'm not, even though I'm making more gravy, I am not going to add more cream because cream, as wonderful and delicious as it is full of fat. It's a lot of fat, and I'm not trying to go overboard. I mean, this is a treat meal, but goodness, I do not want to eat a day's worth of calories in one meal. So I'm gonna be good with that one. So, did I get it off? That's all of it. Okay, now let's set a little bit of a simmer. And you can taste this gravy, once it gets up to a full simmer, you can taste it and see if it's seasoned enough to your likings. If not, add something to it. You can adjust the thickness. Now with this stuff, a little goes a long way. So I'm only using like 1/4 to 1/2 a teaspoon. Not a lot. It's a very dark brown liquid. And it will help to turn your gravy a little darker brown. Because I want a medium brown gravy here. I might add a little more. And it also adds, like I said, this little thing you can't put your finger on. I call it umami. When it's that savory taste that you can't quite describe what it is, but it's something. I call that umami. Alright, and you just want to let this simmer for a couple of minutes to thicken up into a gravy. And like I said, remember your chicken is going to let off some of the juices, so this gravy will probably thin out, or at least stay the same. You know, you are cooking it for an hour, so that might cause some of the liquid to evaporate, but at the same time you get the juices, so it probably evens out. I may add a little bit more water to mine because I put so much more flour, but first I'm going to taste it to see if it's okay. Turn it down low because now it's at a full simmer. You probably can't see that, but it's a nice golden, light golden brown. Oh my, that is so good. Now I should also mention that with bouillon cubes, to me they're pretty bland. They don't have a lot of flavor, they have a lot of salt. So I usually do 1.5 times what the recipe calls for the bouillon cube. So usually you would use 1 cube per 1 cup of water, 1-to-1 ratio. I will usually do 1.5 cube to 1 cup of water. So basically I needed 2 cups of broth. I added 3 of the little bouillon cubes to that. So it's plenty of salt. You don't need to add any more salt. This is salted enough. Let's see. Get this. And like I said, I am going to add some water. Where did I do my cup? Here it is. Because I just want more gravy. So I'm going to add about 1/2 cup more of water. As I said, I added 1/4 cup of flour. The original recipe is like 2 tablespoons or something. It definitely doesn't need any salt. And then finally, at the very end, you want to add in your red pepper flakes. What did I do? A pinch. It just says a pinch. So that's to taste. Depending on how spicy you want it. I like a little bit of a kick. My son doesn't like anything spicy. But so, yeah, that's about 1/2 teaspoon. I'm not gonna go overboard. But stir that in at the end. And then, I wish I could show you this. We have one camera. You know, a lot of times when people do cooking videos, they got like 3, 4, 5 cameras at all different angles so that they can do close-ups and stuff. One, as I told you before, I am a one-man show, a one-woman show. I don't have 4 cameras, first of all, and it's just me. So really, I'm not trying to do all that. Okay. So I got my chicken here, and there's a lot of it, and I'm just going to put this in my Dutch oven first. And let me see if I can show it to you without dropping it. But my chicken is pretty crispy. So, whew, I'm about to drop all of it. Put the juices in too. You should have some juices running off of that chicken. See that? Woo! Woo! Put that in there too, man. Get it all in. God, that skin looks so good. One thing I do like, you know, fried food, I tend to only have it as a treat, but man, I like the crispy skin on fried chicken. Like really, I could just eat the skin. You could take the rest of it away. I love the skin. All right. So, turn this off. And now, normally if you would be putting the chicken back in your skillet and then you want to spoon some of the gravy over the top because you want it all evenly coated. The beauty of using my Dutch oven is I'm going to just pour the gravy on top and it will all be coated. And 425, 1 hour. And then we take it out and we eat it. So I shall be back with the finished product for a taste test, of course. We love the taste test. So yeah, this is all really pretty nicely submerged. So I like that. It looks wonderful already. All right, put your lid on this. 425, 1 hour. I'll be back. Hi, I am back for the taste test. I took my Dutch oven out of the oven and let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes while it's still piping hot, but I am hungry and I need to eat. It's actually 8:30 in the evening. I usually eat dinner about 5:30, so I'm a little behind schedule, so I really need to get this in my belly. So there we are. It's falling apart tender. Oh, that's good. And then, sprinkle the parsley on it for garnish. You could sprinkle it over the pan, over the whole thing, or over the individual servings. It's up to you. I'm glad I made the extra gravy because the more gravy, the better. And it's not a ton of extra, but what the original recipe called for was not enough. That is so good. I'm talking stick to your ribs, hearty, filling. Uh-oh. The dogs smell it. Deliciousness. So, there we are. That's smothered chicken with rice is what I decided to have with it. And like I said, you can do this with any protein really that, you would braise or cook for a long time. You can do it with pork chops, pork steak, pork loin, pork whatever. Do it with any pieces of chicken that you would like. You can try to make it lighter by taking the skin off the chicken. You can even do it with some kind of beef. Even a chuck roast would be good, or some kind of tougher cut of meat that you probably would want to cook for an hour or two. So this is really a delicious dish. I love it, and I don't know when I'll have it again. But it is fantastic. So thank you for joining me. If you haven't already, like this video, subscribe to the channel so that you can get alerts of new videos and to help my videos move up in the search engine. Thank you, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.